In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be reviewing the win against Torino. We'll be previewing the Champions League game against Slavia Prague, the Serie A game against SPAL. We'll have an interview with Mr. Gabriele Marcotti, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com.
Per De Vrij, c'è la torre per Vecino, la presa! La ripresa Vecino! La ripresa Vecino! Il toro! Il toro! Il toro! Il tiro! Samir! Bogdanovic! La recupera Brozovic, andiamo in contropiede, la porta è vuota, tira, attenzione, e gol!
Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host Nima, Tavallaey, wishing you all back from a week that was somewhat bittersweet. It was sweet because Inter won quite comfortably against Napoli in conditions that were not suitable for football, maybe water polo, but definitely not football. And bitter because of the injury to Nicolo Barella. But we'll get into all of that. We're together with the panelists we're joined with today. Joining us from all the way from frozen tundras of Toronto, the producer for TSN, Mr. Michael Gallo.
Thank you for having me again, Nima. Yes, like you said, a bittersweet week, but there was 3 points, and definitely got our work cut out for us in the Champions League this week, and again on the weekend against SPAL.
Yes, we do. We'll get into all that. We're also joined by our good friend, the writer of the Inter Legends on SempreInter, Mr. Critty Smith.
Hello, everyone. For me, I didn't think it was a bittersweet week. I thought it was actually quite good. I'm looking forward to a very easy week this coming week.
Okay, you're not afraid of jinx and superstition.
Not afraid. I fear no more, Nima. I fear no more.
Okay, well, I'll be sure to ask you why that is a little later on. And we're also joined by our good friend, Mr. Will Beckman.
Football, medical prognosis, Kama Sutra. We've got it all on this week's episode of Studio Inter.
Yes, we certainly do. And we, especially when Conte goes full on Conte, as that's the only way to describe it. We are also joined by a very good friend of the show. He's part of the Jules and Gab podcast. He's also part of the Serie A Awesome podcast. You can see him on ESPN FC. He's an author. He's one of the best out there. Mr. Gabriele Marcotti, welcome back.
Great to be with you guys. And Nima, once again, you're way too kind.
It's good. Right, let's get to it, Gab. I know you and I, we've been talking a little bit about this. You and I were very, very vocal about we didn't want Conte to come to Inter for reasons that were very similar. But I wanted to ask you if your opinion has changed a little bit because of the results, especially in the Serie A. Has he surprised you, or has it gone exactly according to what you expected? I want to pick your brain a little bit. Let me know. What do you think?
So I think there's two ways of looking at it, right? So, I still think it was the wrong appointment because you have no idea what it's going to cost you down the road. You have no idea how things may blow up and possibly cause damage. There's just too much stuff that we don't know. In the here and now, though, I think it's pretty remarkable how he's rallied everybody. I don't think we've had a peep of unhappiness from within the squad, certainly since the transfer window closed. And that's a credit to him. I always make the point that there's two elements, I think, to being a coach. And one is, you need to come up with the right tactical idea and how you're going to play and who's going to play and whatever else. And then you need to go and get buy-in and sell it to your players and get them to really believe in you. And then that latter part, especially, I think, is something that Conte has done exceptionally well.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. Will, did you have a question for Gab?
I do. Hi, Gab. Thank you for joining us. I suppose I'll just follow on from that discussion, really. You said there's been no unhappiness within the squad, which I think was true as far as I can remember. There was a bit of public unhappiness from Conte himself about 3 or 4 weeks ago when he did his thing after the match against Borussia Dortmund. We've had a lot of chat on it over the last couple of weeks, but I just wondered what you thought of that and whether it's actually a good thing, whether he's just being damaging and unhelpful, or Can we move on? Is it going to come back and haunt us? The fact that he said all these things. What did you make of it? When he's obviously, I'm talking about when, he said that he shouldn't have trusted the club in the summer and the recruitment was iffy and all that sort of thing.
I mean, look, I think one of the things I'd be most concerned about is how does it impact his relationship with Sensi and Barella, right? Because those are the two guys, the guy from Sassuolo and the guy from Cagliari. Do they feel let down or whatever else? All the indications we've had, and I haven't spoken to them, but certainly my impression is that, they're not affected by it. They still feel Conte's trust, and they're still, they're still totally on board. So from that perspective, that's less of a concern. More broadly, I think it kind of foreshadows what Conte's done kind of throughout his career, that he believes in certain things. He believes in veterans. He believes there's such a thing as, a champion, as a winning mentality. He worships at the altar of old guys who've won things. All of this speaks to this narrative. And I think it's also a bit of a muscle flex with a view towards January. And I think that's what would worry me, if I were Inter, simply because of all the issues that we've talked about before, with, the fact that you took arguably your three biggest assets and gave them away for free because you couldn't find anybody to take them. And then you went and spent crazy money in the summer, and, you're kind of really on a knife edge vis-a-vis financial fair play, and with a lot of uncertainty for the future. And those restrictions likely aren't going to go away in the immediate unless Conte wins the Champions League or something. So, all these things I think should be a concern. And when a manager goes so far off message, when he goes out and he says, "Oh, well, maybe Marotta should be here talking to you and explaining things to you," I mean, you know what? Like, I'm all for like the lone wolf, but dude, let's kind of deal in facts here, and let's also deal with the fact maybe that weirdly, and this is one of the Conte paradoxes, I think he did his best work managing the Italian national team at the Euros, and that was, in terms of talent, that was probably the worst Italy squad at a major tournament in the past 50 years. I don't go much further than that, so I couldn't tell you. But, they were terrible, and he turned them into contenders. So he can work with, inferior raw materials. And why not just focus on that and pick your spots and act a little more like a grown-up?
Mike, do you have a question for Gab?
Yeah, I got a couple questions for Gab, if you don't mind. But first, I want to say thanks for coming on, Gab. I work for TSN, and we actually show ESPN FC on our network every single day. So I've watched you for many years go at it with Craig and the other guys about defending Serie A. So I appreciate you coming on, because it's good to have an English-speaking Italian go to bat for Serie A all the time. So I appreciate you for that. My question for you is, with the field conditions and the weather, how much worse could the weather have been for that game to be canceled?
It's a good question. I mean, I think generally they're reluctant to cancel games, unless there's a player safety issues. I mean, obviously, we saw that happen with the other game on Sunday.
Lecce Cagliari.
But they will always opt for they'll generally opt for a delay, and and I also think, I know they made a big deal out of that, but I think one of the big issues is the drainage and the runoff, and that stadium is a pretty modern stadium, in the sense, obviously, that the pitch was rebuilt and relayed following the Turin Olympics. So, look, it is what it is, but I kind of like the fact that they're not loath in Italy to go and play in slightly rougher conditions. And I would imagine most Inter fans who remember Perugia Juventus game are probably of the same mind.
I agree with that.
That was the best part of this weekend. All the Juventus fans I saw on the Lecce Cagliari hashtag saying, "Well, if they played in Perugia, you should always play." 20 years on.
Yeah, true. They can't let that one go. Right, Critty, do you have a question for Gab?
I've got two questions for Gab. Gab, thanks for joining us, first of all. The first one's very easy. Do you think that Craig Burley or Steve Nicol will ever say anything kind about Inter or any other Serie A team besides Juventus? Because I watch pretty much every Sunday recap show just to see that one thing. And there's a lot of positive about Liverpool, and there's a lot of positive about some other clubs. But I just want maybe one positive Inter comment. And the second question is, in your opinion, so quick, I'm going to look at his last two appointments, but you already mentioned on the Italian national team, which I thought actually Conte massively overachieved in that role with the squad he was given in 2016. And then, of course, the Chelsea appointment, which he took, they didn't have to compete in Europe at all, so they had a very easy path to the Premier League title. For what it's worth, I mean, it's not easy, but very, very, it's a much easier path to get there than having to play Champions League or anything like that. So it seems like in year two with Chelsea things went sour. I believe that with getting rid of Icardi, getting rid of Nainggolan, getting addition by subtraction. Despite what roster he has, he's already exceeded any expectation that I had of him this season. I think that what Conte's done, I came on this very show many times and was vehemently against him being appointed as Inter manager, but he has sort of made a believer out of me. Do you think that this is sustainable? Do you think that this can grow from here? Do you think it'll be a gradual rise like with Juventus and the rebuild that they had when he was there? Or do you think that ultimately Conte will out-Conte himself of a job and it'll all fall like a house of cards?
Well, so first of all, some of you guys have thanked me for coming on. I don't want to waste time by thanking everybody individually. So just want to say it's a pleasure and a privilege to be on with you guys, and thank you all for your kind words. To answer your question, I was thinking about this, about how might things shake out? Because, dude, Juventus may be ahead of Inter, but they're really not playing well. And, they're basically ahead of Inter because they probably have better players. And, it's weird. It's almost like they're almost more like an Allegri team right now, where we've all seen this, where they kind of all play badly and then something happens in the last 10 minutes and it's a moment of genius or somebody falling over in the box or whatever. And then they get the points, right? I thought the Atalanta game was a really good example of that. So because I try to be rational about this, I'm imagining, Juventus will regress to the mean somehow, that they're going to step down. I'm slightly in two minds because on the one hand, I expect them to learn Sarri's style of play, but he doesn't seem to be teaching them Sarri's style of play. So you're not necessarily going to get sort of the usual Sarri value add that certainly we saw in Napoli and you hope to get. Plus, on top of that, I think he's got a big issue because in his attempts to keep everybody happy, he keeps rotating the midfield. So I'm not clear how you're ever going to get much chemistry there. Plus, add in the fact that I think the Champions League, again, for obvious reasons, will be a priority for Juventus. And, we'll see what happens to Inter in the group stage, but assuming that they don't advance and it's a Europa League scenario, that could obviously play seriously into Inter's hands. I agree with you. I certainly didn't expect them to have this many points. I didn't expect Juve to have this many points either. I expected Napoli to challenge for the title, so I guess it kind of shows what I know. Has he massively overachieved with his squad? In terms of points, maybe, but equally, he kind of got pretty much what he wanted in the summer. I mean, he was very, very clear, as you guys all know, that, no, I'm not even going to pretend that I want Perisic, Nainggolan, and Icardi around. And you know what? If that, messes with their transfer valuation, so be it. Rarely do you get a club that, bend over backwards for a manager as much as Inter did for Conte this year. Rarely do you get a club that, certainly, 3 or 4 of their big signings were all locked up, by July 1st. Those are kind of ideal conditions in which to work.
For sure. Mike, I know you had another question as well.
Yeah, sorry, I had one more question for you, Gab. So ESPN FC, obviously they come out with their top 100 players in the world every single year, and the one came out just this past week. And I noticed a couple of omissions that I was expecting to see on this top 100 list. For me, Handanovic was not a top 10 goalkeeper in the world that I was a little bit disappointed in. And I did not see also Sensi as a top 10 attacking midfielder, but Ever Banega was, which would kind of a little bit confuse me. And we've seen Skriniar was the only Inter player, and he was the number 10 central defender. Obviously, as Inter fan, we have our our issues with it. But any chance that you've had to take a look at it, and any opinions on the ESPN FC Top 100?
Yeah. So, and in fact, sorry, but I'll get to that in a second. But first, I completely ignored the other question before about whether Craig or Stevie are ever going to say nice things about Inter. I mean, guys, let's face it. Inter hasn't really given them,
Much to
too
be
much
nice
of an
about.
opportunity to go and
Yeah.
celebrate. Would have been different if they'd hung on in Barcelona. Would have been different if they'd hung on against Borussia Dortmund. But they didn't. And I think that's just something that, for the time being, that we need to deal with. I don't think that they have a bias against Italian clubs in any way. I know they're big fans of Napoli or they were last season when things clicked, and maybe Craig more than Stevie for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
They gave Roma credit as well when they knocked out Barcelona. So, but all right, about the FC 100. So we have a very, very large group of people who go and vote on this thing. They're guys who are ESPN affiliated, from all our properties around the world, South America, the Pacific Rim, the Caribbean, the US, Europe, obviously. And you're going to get a lot of different views on people who judge things very differently. And, I think, especially when it comes to certain positions, you get certain people who maybe get in there on reputation, or some people, a little bit like the Ballon d'Or, right? They maybe don't follow every league, but I mean, look, I don't claim to be an expert on the Dutch league, but I do watch highlights every week, and I know that Ajax won the title by 3 points last season over PSV Eindhoven, and it was very tight. And obviously, I watched Ajax in the Champions League. Does this mean that there should be, I don't even know how many there were, 5 or 6
A lot,
Ajax players in there?
a lot of them.
I mean, do we really? I mean, some of them are very, very good. Don't get me wrong. Others, I was kind of like, meh. I think that's just the reality of how people vote. Most people probably didn't get a chance to see much of Inter. Personally, I had Skriniar in my top 10. I think Sensi was penalized for the fact that he spent half the season playing for Sassuolo. And remember too that I think the ballots would have come in, I think, sort of around the end of September. So people weren't necessarily going to go and vote on, on sort of half a season of greatness. I'm not that he was poor for Sassuolo last year, but let's face it, Sassuolo isn't really going to be on somebody's radar. And frankly, to a certain portion of the world, neither are Inter until they, get back to where their fan base and their ownership thinks that they should be. For my money, I honestly, as for Handanovic, I don't know. I'm not a Handanovic guy as much as a lot of other people are. I kind of think that, Handanovic is part of the reason Inter didn't advance out of the group stage last year in the Champions League. And I know plays a really important role at the club, but you put a gun to my head, I can probably think of 10 better goalkeepers that I personally would pick.
I just before we let you go, I just wanted to quickly ask you. This past week in the Serie A has been, I mean, just today with Cellino doing a racial pun, and then Antonio Conte turning into some sort of a sex love guru. What is going on? Like, I mean, we follow the Serie A, we're used to it, but I mean, do these things even, like, do you react anymore to these things, or is it just like just another day in Serie A?
I mean, they're two different things. When I've interviewed Antonio Conte one-on-one a couple times, and when he's good, when he wants to be good, when he's chilled out, I don't know, maybe he was thinking of sex. He's really good. I mean, he's really, really good. That whole interview, I was mentioned this on the Gab and Jules show. It was kind of overshadowed by his sex comments but there was a lot of really, really good stuff in it.
Yeah.
I think he was kind of having a giggle. This whole thing about whether players should be abstinent or whatever else. I mean, like, when you break it down, he makes a joke. Oh yeah, and if they are going to have sex, it should be, it should be
With their
wife,
wives.
partner, wives or partners, so
Yes.
that they don't feel like they have to impress. That he's making a joke, saying the thing about the cowgirl position. Whatever. He's being funny, and he's just having a bit of fun. Cellino, of course, thought he was being funny. Unfortunately, Cellino isn't a particularly intelligent or sensitive man, as anybody who's followed Leeds United or Cagliari before that realizes. And I think, it's easy to go and treat everything the same, right? This is not the same, at least to me, as a footballer getting racially abused from the stands. And I think it's important to bear in mind. It's a guy trying to crack a joke, which is a very stupid joke, but it's also, he would come back and he would also point out that, he's the guy who gave Balotelli a job when everybody thought he was toxic. And, he uses this Italian word called sdrammatizzare, which kind of means like, oh, let's tone down the tension by turning things into a joke, right? And and a lot of people don't know the background to this, that Balotelli didn't play at the weekend because he was late for training, and I think he also skipped the training session. And it's one of those situations where it's one of those why always me type situations with Mario, and that is unrelated to the abuse he suffered in Verona. So I think at a minimum, Cellino is totally tone deaf and inappropriate in what he says. I don't think he was trying to racially abuse his own player, but he should have the sensitivity to realize that when somebody's been through that, even if totally separate from that, they behave like an ass, and unfortunately, Balotelli does behave like an ass somehow. You don't resolve the situation by making reference to that, and it's kind of, and then once again, I've had this conversation, and Nima, this, with the head of the Italian league, Luigi De Servo, who incidentally right about now might need a new boss, but that's a whole other issue. When I told him, I'm like, dude, you got to do something, because all right, there's the racist abuse in the stadiums, but then there's all the stupid things that the clubs say, whether it's Verona's Twitter account, whether it was Giulini after the Lukaku incident. I thought Inter also missed a trick and not kind of at least explaining that, the Curva Nord guys, they speak for their 200-300 members. They don't speak for all Inter ultras, and certainly not all Inter fans. And he just kind of puts his hands up. Oh, but it's not up to us. It's up to the FA to punish things. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? If you're serious, if you care about Serie A, you have to make sure that people are on board with the messaging and that they're sending the right messaging. And you need to educate people to realize that this isn't stuff to go and to go and screw around with, right? So to somebody who speaks Italian, right, you understand that when he says, "Oh, Balotelli è nero," used in that in that context, if you speak Italian, it's kind of like saying "incazzato nero" means that
Exactly.
it's dark. I'm pissed off. it's a double entendre. And then he says, "Oh, waiting for things to for things to clarify or to lighten up." You should be intelligent enough to know that, first of all, it's kind of a stupid thing to say in Italian anyway. Translated into English, when on top of that, people are going to be unfamiliar to the backstory here. And on top of that, they're not going to know the double entendre of the word. You're just going to look like an absolute ass. And this is a guy, by the way, Cellino, I know we like to depict him sometimes as sort of some Sardinian bumpkin. Well, he's not. This is a guy who has owned a club in another country, a club which, by the way, in the 1970s and 80s had a serious history of racism itself. So he's been exposed to that. He's a guy who spends half his time in Miami. So he's exposed to diversity in different cultures and supposedly, a more global outlook than some of these other guys. And for him to come out and say that and to think that this is a joke, if you're the chef, if you're the league, you say, guys, every day you open your mouth with something stupid or your club Twitter account comes up with something asinine like this, you make us all look bad. You may be right when you say, oh, but how can we control ultras? How can we control fans and blah, blah, blah? That's one set of issues. And hopefully we need to work harder to give you the tools to do that and so on. And we need to show that you have the will to do that. But what you can control is what comes out of your mouth when you're in front of a camera and what your Twitter accounts come out with. And the message that these clubs are sending, and look, it's a minority of clubs, but it's far too many, is that this is all a big freaking joke, or, oh, people are exaggerating this or whatever else. They don't understand the seriousness. And this is what we need to get across, that, I don't care why you feel you need to make a joke, or I don't care why you may racially abuse somebody. The message is to be simple. There will be no racist abuse and no joking about this kind of crap. You want to make jokes like that, then, Massimo, go to your Nigerian best friend and you guys go and joke about that. Because his buddy's Nigerian, right?
Yeah, I know.
You do that in private. But when you're speaking, you're representing not just yourself, you're representing your club and you're representing Serie A. So just don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, pretty much everything you said. I have nothing to add to that. And for me, that's why I call it a racial pun, because it is. He was very proud of having, because if you see the video, he's very proud of having made a pun that can be a double entendre, and he thinks it's really funny. And he's really proud of it. He thinks he's made a smart thing, and it's just so embarrassing, and you can just hear everyone's jaws drop to the floor. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Gab. Before I let you go, have you got anything else coming up that you want to promote? Like you got a book coming up or an article or whatever? Let us know.
No, for the time being, but my obviously if I'll plug the Gab and Jules show. It's a podcast that Julian Lawrence and I do Monday for ESPN FC. We try to cover a bit of everything, the big issues in European football, and we did address the Conte sex thing. And obviously we do the Serie Awesome podcast. Will be coming out on Thursday this week. I'll be joined by Mina and Nikki. We'll look back over what will hopefully be a good Champions League week for Serie A clubs. And I got my Monday Musings column up on Mondays. Talk a little bit of Mourinho in there, and keep following us, and of course the FC show as well. So thank you all for your support, and like I say, it's always a privilege to be able to talk about football.
Thanks, man. Before I let you go, just quickly, can you give me just your Serie A prediction from 6-1, Capocannoniere and Coppa Italia winners? Just quickly.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm putting you on your spot. That's why I saved this one for the last.
Man, I hate these predictions.
I know you do. I remember. I didn't remember last year as well. The Piontek one I love the most.
I imagine I had Ronaldo's Capocannoniere. Yeah. Not looking so good right now, but I don't want to say Ciro Immobile, so I'm going to stick with Cristiano. I imagine him getting a bunch of goals against Brescia or Verona late in the season, and Lecce, of course. Coppa Italia winner, I'm going to say Roma, because it's not Juve, and hopefully the other clubs go for more important things. What else you got?
6-1 in Serie A.
Oh, 6-1. All right. So in sixth place, I have Atalanta, because I imagine they will all run out of gas. Fifth place, I have Roma. Fourth place, don't hate me, I have Milan. Third place, because I'm a useless romantic, despite De Laurentiis' best efforts to go and screw things up. I got Napoli. Second place, I have, drumroll, I have Juve, because I have never
Really?
picked to win the title, ever. And so first place, Inter.
Okay. Well, from your mouth to God's ears. I hope that's true. But
This changes week on week, by the way.
Yeah, I bet it does. I mean, last season you had a bet with Nicky Bandini about Christoph Piontek not scoring 20 goals, and he easily got to that. Do you think? I mean,
yeah, I know, but I was vindicated because he's terrible. You guys don't see that this year.
That's what I was gonna say. Do you think he'll even score 5 goals this year? I think you should ask for a quits or double, like double or quits bet with Nicky, saying if we'll even score 5 goals this year.
You've given me an idea for Thursday.
Yeah. Go for it. Thank you so much, Gabriele Marcotti at Marcotti. Thanks so much for coming on.
Take care, guys. It's my pleasure.
Grazie, Gab. Grazie.
Thank you.
Right. Let's continue. I mean, the Torino game was a game that Inter completely dominated and controlled from start to finish. The Barella injury is really is something that's really bothering me, because I'm happy that it wasn't an ACL. I know a lot of people were, because I tweeted out that these conditions scream ACL injury, and people say I jinxed it. But my jinxing powers aside, this game should not have been played. To me, this was not, the Perugia game and all that nonsense aside, to me this had injury scream, written all over it. And Belotti got injured. And Barella got injured. Now, thankfully, it's an ACL injury. He sprained his knee. They're going to have an arthroscopic surgery. I think they had it today. The results are yet to be announced. We'll have to wait and see. But I am really worried, because there's no doubt in my mind that he won't be back until earliest January. Stefano Sensi's injury also looks like he's not going to play against Slavia Prague. So Inter have an issue. Inter have a big problem going into this Slavia Prague game, and they only have 2. I mean, aside from Vicino and Borja Valero, Gagliardini's out. Who do Inter play? Is it Skriniar, or should Inter even bother trying to go for the win against Slavia Prague, given the situation, and instead try to focus on the more important game against SPAL and to continue this momentum and this pressure Inter have against Juventus? What would you do if it were up to you, Mike?
Well, I mean, we're in trouble, because without Barella and Sensi in the midfield, those are our 2 workhorses all season long. So without them against Slavia Prague, I think we're in a lot of trouble. I can't say save things for SPAL, because we are playing SPAL at home, and they are 19th place in Serie A right now. So it's not like I would save things, because I still think we need to go out for this. But at the same time, all out with what in the midfield? That's a good question. I mean, I want to know is Gagliardini for sure not going to be available on Wednesday? Because I've seen
he might be back.
So if he's back, then I think we definitely have to have him in the midfield. I mean, whatever options we have. I mean, you know that Candreva's gonna play. You know that Gagliardini, if he's healthy, is gonna play. I don't even know, is Borja Valero. I mean, he did play last match, but that might be an option as well in the midfield. So I think we're in a lot of trouble, because our 2 most important midfielders are both out for this match, and obviously Inter need a win. So I think we're in a very difficult situation right now, and Slavia Prague is a lot better than obviously everyone generically can think that they are. So I say with Barella it would be a lot easier for us, but now that he's not there, this is going to be a very difficult match to get 3 points. I'd be surprised if we did.
William, I have a question for you. I mean, given that Lazaro and D'Ambrosio, thank God, are back, and Lazaro's been actually pretty well, and this is a game where Inter need to kind of attack. What do you think the chances are of seeing Don Antonio Candyman Candreva in the middle of the park, where he's played in the past? Do you think Conte would? Yeah, didn't see that one coming, did you?
That spherical object coming towards me is a curveball, is it?
Yes, it is. It is.
I hadn't considered it. I mean, I think D'Ambrosio will play because Conte loves him. And it might not be a coincidence that the moment he came back at the weekend, we had our first clean sheet in 6 matches. Obviously, he's not the only reason, but tactically, he's a very useful player to have. So if he is fit, I would expect him to play. And probably as the right wing back, so that takes that issue out. Or I think Gagliardini will probably play because I don't know. Conte doesn't strike me as someone who's going to take a random risk or do something sort of a little bit crazy in a game like that. I think he'll go with his trusted soldiers, as it were. Then again, Candreva is one of them, but not in that position. I don't. I would be surprised, but as I said, you have just thrown this at me, so maybe in half an hour I'll realise this is actually a really good idea.
Okay. I mean, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because I think that Borja Valero will play. I think Brozovic will play because we've noticed that Brozovic plays no matter if he can stand up. If he has a pulse, he will play. Whether or not he can actually move or he's in pain, that doesn't matter for Conte. If he's breathing and he can stand up, he will play. And the question is who will join them. I'm just thinking maybe Milan Skriniar, or maybe if Gagliardini is fit, he will play. Vecino for sure. We'll have to wait and see. But Critty, you were positive. You said you were all positive, and you're the president of the Go Conte fan club and all that. So why don't you take on the role of Mr. Positivity that Mo isn't here and tell us why things will go so good against Slavia Prague?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say to that game last week, from someone who tore his ACL playing football on a pitch just like that, I had PTSD watching that game. Every single time that one of the Inter players would touch the ball, I literally relived in my mind. You just step on the ball the wrong way, and you put your weight on your knee, and it just the wetness and the nastiness, it just has a way of doing things to the human anatomy that you don't want. And so I was very scared of injuries when we got up 2-0. I really honestly just wanted us to just put 10 in the box and just call it and not go forward and just don't risk anything. So it was just a very, very awkward game. I'm surprised there were 3 goals scored, to be honest, but it's kind of because of that I'm on the positivity club, because, in a game where you would say, you would expect maybe a really nasty 1-1 grinder or a 1-0 Inter win and not much going forward. It was actually, they had some. I mean, look at the second goal. That beautiful cross to the opposite side of the goal and the easy tap in. I mean, there was actually some beautiful play in that match. Lukaku, his one-on-one move right through the legs into the far back corner of the net to make it 3-0. I think this team has something I never saw under Mancini in the second run, or Spalletti, and damn sure not Pioli. They have this confidence about them. It almost doesn't really matter what 11 you put out there. And Michael, I also agree Handanovic should not be in the top 10. I really, looking at that list, don't know where you'd place him, but that's another story for another day. This team has a confidence, Nima. With wins, with victories comes confidence, and with confidence comes more confidence. You build upon it. It's like a wall. It's like Donald Trump's wall that he's so.
You mean that it's non-existent because that wall doesn't exist?
Well, it's in his mind. It exists. You have to go in his mind. Yes, okay. It's in his mind. So that's it's built upon. All great championship teams are built that way. And when obviously if you go back to the middle of last decade, that's how it all started for us. Inter incrementally chipped away at getting to the Champions League final and won it. After failures in the tournament before, after not winning the Scudetto for many years, they got that in 2005. Then they built upon that, and half a decade later, there you sit, on top of the world. So this is an Inter side. It's that's why I was so eager to ask the question about, this is not on paper. This is by far not the most talented side in Europe by any stretch. But what he's done to be really level on points with Juventus this far in the season. Yes, I know they're 1 point back, but cut me some slack here. This is incredible. I don't see why you should lose to the second to last team in the table. You should be able. Conte should be able to go into the dressing room and say, who wants to play midfield for Inter? First three people to raise their hand, you're in. And that should be enough, because they're flying high with this confidence. And this isn't, and this is not all about player ratings, Nima. This is these guys are feeding off of whatever this man is saying. They are buying the product that he is selling. And that human emotion, the mental aspect of the game plays a lot into it. You have the most talented player in the world, and if his confidence is down and his form is bad, then it doesn't matter. All the gifts that God gave you will not matter. You can't translate that onto the pitch, and these players are doing that right now. So why would I pick against a team right now that has, especially in league play, all the momentum in the world going for them? They seemingly cannot lose right now. And against Prague, yes, let me tell you this. Take that game. Go for those 3 points. Borussia Dortmund are collapsing from within right now. They are self-destructing and basically giving Lucien Favre an ultimatum. Either you beat Barcelona at the Camp Nou or you're fired. You're sacked. So he has a job-saving match coming up. And if he does not win that, I don't see that's, to me, is stupid, because I would have fired him after he lost to Union Berlin many months ago. But so you can lose. You can say you beat Barca and lose to whoever next week in the Bundesliga. I don't see what it matters. But they've basically given him an ultimatum. That club is by no means going to guaranteed finish ahead of Inter in the group. So I say keep charging forward. Obviously, you can't make the same mistakes that you made in the first game against Prague. I think Inter did underestimate them. I don't really know if they knew what they were getting. They played Barcelona a hell of a match when they just a few weeks ago. So now that you know what you have in Prague, definitely go for the win. I would go for the 3 points. I think that there's 6 points to be gotten from this week just based on how they're playing.
Treble hero Samuel Eto'o said this week, or I think it was today or yesterday, that he thinks that not only are Inter good enough to win the Serie A, they're good enough to win the Champions League. In order for them to do that, they have to obviously beat the Slavia Prague. So I'm just going to quickly go around and ask everyone what they think in terms of prediction of results and goal scorers, starting with you, Mike.
1-1. Lukaku will score, but I don't think we get the 3 points just based on our the Sensi and Tavallaey injury. That's it. I mean, I really don't. I think that they had these injuries not happen, I think we'd be in the driver's seat. And to Critty's explanation of what's going on with Dortmund right now, well, what a disaster they were. They were down 3-0 on the weekend. They came back tied 3-3. But I really think that it's all about that midfielder, those two midfielders not being available, and that's what's going to be our downfall.
I'm thinking 1-1 as well, but I have Lautaro scoring. Will?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have the same scoreline, so it almost certainly will not be 1-1, given we all said it would be.
Who will score?
Lautaro, because he's scoring loads. He'll probably score in the first half an hour as well, because I saw an incredible
That's what he
stat
does.
the weekend.
That's what he does. That's what he does.
The Inter TV had a stat at the weekend about how he's scored, I think, 8 of his 9 goals in the first half an hour of matches this season. So, yeah, he'll do that, and then we'll run out of legs in midfield, and Slavia will equalise. I mean, they've given everyone a game in this group. I mean, it's remarkable when you think back to the draw, and their management were mocked for having laughed when they were drawn in this group, as if they knew they were going to get a pasting in every match. And as it turns out, they've drawn with Inter. They've given Barcelona 2 really good matches, getting a point at the Camp Nou. They were in the match at home to Dortmund until the 90th minute when it was still 1-0. So yeah, this is tough. I think if we had one of Sensi or Barella, I'd be a lot more confident. But yeah, regardless of how optimistic I am or not, it would be absolutely farcical to not go all out for this match, because the fact of the matter is, if Inter win both their games, they're through. So let's do it.
Right. Critty, what about you? Give me a prediction.
3-0 to Inter.
Ooh, lovely. Do you think Lukaku will finally score in the Champions League?
Yes, I do. I think I'm going to go with Skriniar, Lautaro, and Lukaku so each of them will bag one.
Nice. I can live with that. I hope you're right. You've been really good at these predictions this season, so I hope absolutely you're right. We play SPAL on the weekend at home at the San Siro. I expect 3 points here, and I expect 3-0. I expect 2. No, actually, I'm going to say 2-0. I expect Inter to win. SPAL just drew to Genoa. Andrea Petagna scored from the spot because that's what he does. That's his job. But I think he will. I don't expect SPAL to be any problems for Inter. I expect Inter to win comfortably, and I think they will win 2-0. And Lukaku will score both because that's what he does. He scores in the Serie A against bad teams and takes those ugly points that people laugh and mock at, but are also important. Michael, give me a prediction for SPAL.
Yeah, I was watching the game while I was just finishing up while we started this, and I just wanted to get a good sense of how they were playing. And I mean, I believe it looks like Federico Di Francesco, he got injured and didn't look too well at the end of that. I think it was around the 46th, 47th minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just didn't. I mean, you're at home against a team that's in 19th place. They haven't won since October 5th. So I want to, when you look at say Inter's Champions League campaign, say they draw or lose to Slavia Prague on Wednesday, and they're out of the Champions League, and at that point you can now focus on Serie A and Serie A only for the most part, other than Coppa Italia. I mean, that'll give them a better outlook on the rest of the season, starting with SPAL on the weekend, but. Anything short of 3 points, I don't see how this game is not a win, and a 2 or 3-0 victory seems to be the likeliest of results for me. And Martinez with an early goal, of course.
Love it. Critty, give me a scoreline prediction, goal scorers.
4-1 to Inter. It'll be 3-0. And Hondo will lose interest, so he'll let one in, so he'll just be bored. But
you've really replaced Mo in this episode, haven't you? Like full on. You're Mr. Positivity and you're anti Handanovic. I love this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I'm not anti. I'm just saying he's going to be back there twiddling his thumbs. He's going to have nothing to do, and he's going to get caught for one. But the game will be well in hand by that point. I think Lukaku bags a brace. I think Lautaro Martinez scores one, and I love the center backs to score off the corner. So I'm going to go with either one of them to score off of a corner because they're just so damn good at it. What
about you, Mr. William, man of Beck?
3-0. I think Lukaku and 2 from Lautaro because they're on fire, and Lula is going to go through SPAL like a tractor. This is about as non-difficult as it gets in Serie A. So the side that we saw at the weekend should not have any problems, regardless of who they've got in midfield against SPAL. I mean, Barella's not really a problem as such for this week. My bigger concern is after that we play Roma, then Barcelona and Fiorentina in a week. So that's a little bit more problematic. Because we've had one of the reasons, if you want to be really pernickety, that we've had such a good record is we've still got a few difficult games to come. Napoli and Atalanta haven't played yet either. So they're all coming in the next month or so. So that's where we're going to see how much this slightly depleted squad has got. But I would just like to say again, we were all very pessimistic about that match of the weekend, so it's only worth underlining again. But that was very impressive. I mocked Mo openly when he said we were going to win 3-1, and it was, of course, because I knew we were going to win 3-0. I can get out of that one pretty easily. But yeah, we said that they were going to have to take their chances, their first chance, because Torino wouldn't give up much, and they pretty much did take the first chance. And from then on, Torino were forced to come out, and everything became a little bit easier. So congratulations to the team for a wonderful, a surprisingly comfortable Saturday.
For sure. Right, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something in the world of football, starting with this week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. Will Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yeah, well, we've already touched on this with Gab Marcotti, but I think it picked itself this week.
Just give us the quote. Just give us the quote.
Yeah, so we talk. It's Antonio Conte. It's a little bit unfair given how well he's doing, but it was a little strange that what he said to L'Equipe last week. Competition for me is battle. It is your death, my life. I'm very focused on the fact that in the end there should only be one left standing, and I do everything to make it my team. This is my way of being, and it will lead me to interrupt my career very early because I live my work too much. Often I ask if it is right to spend so much time without my family. During competition, sex should not last long, and also it should be done with the least effort possible, preferably underneath the partner, preferably with their wife, as then there is no obligation to put in an exceptional performance. Make of that what you will. I know that Giampiero Gasperini was asked if he had any similar rules for his players, and he said no. If anything, the players it's probably the players who'd have to teach me something. To which he got a nice round of applause in his press conference. I think Lautaro was asked about it as well, and he kind of glossed over it with a slightly embarrassed face. But not what I was expecting to read when I woke up on Thursday or Friday, whenever it was. So I'm sorry, Antonio, you're wonderful, but that caught us all a little bit off guard.
The thing is, though, I think when he says things like that, it just goes to show how meticulous he is and how obsessed he is with winning. So I think it's a little bit tongue in cheek. So for this reason alone, I'm very, very happy that Raja Nainggolan is not at Inter, because any rules of the samurai, the path of the warrior rules that Antonio Conte has, Raja Nainggolan is breaking them whilst asleep, let alone when he's awake. So I think it might be a good thing that good old Raja is in Sardinia, where he can smoke and drink and do what he wants without being bothered by Antonio Conte teaching him how to do the reverse cowgirl.
If you were a journalist worth your salt and he was still in the squad, you'd be going straight to him for a comment on that particular
are you kidding me?
question. Yeah.
Him and just think if Wanda was still here. Can you just imagine her reply on how cheesy, like what an Argentinian soap opera that would turn into on Tiki Taka, with her and Cassano having a debate on sexual positions on Mediaset. Like, Jesus, thank God for small favors. Thank God he's not there. But I still think that she will definitely have something to say about this, because this is too juicy for anyone not to let it go, not to pounce on. Right, let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. Michael Gallo.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
So my Moratti of the week will go to the league, Serie A. I know we like to, not give them. They do a lot of things wrong. Obviously, we bring it up with racism and so many other different types of issues. But they do get one thing right, and that is the initiative with the gender violence and violence against women. And this is, I believe, the third season that Serie A has been doing this, where the players wear the red mark on their face in support of it. And every player, coaches, referees, everyone is involved in this initiative and to raise awareness for it for violence against women and gender violence. And it's something that it makes me feel a little better that the league, that they get so many things wrong, but this is something that they've got right. And it is what it is, and very, I say, proud to watch this weekend and everyone take part. And and they're very public about it. The league, whether it's through social media, the players, they're all posting things in support of it. So it's very good to see, and I'm happy that the league does this.
Absolutely. Fair is fair. We should praise and we should criticize, and this was a good thing they did. Right, let's move on to something much more negative, which this week's Moggi, which will be presented by Mr. Critty Smith.
I wish we would have ended on Michael's stuff because, it was happy. It was a good thing. So this
it gave you a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yes, I'm just gonna read. I'm gonna read a quick snippet, real quick, if you'll please allow me. The headline is
Right.
Mario Balotelli subject to racist comment by his Brescia chairman. So, Mario Balotelli has been subject to an extraordinary racist comment from his chairman at Brescia. The former Leeds owner, Massimo Cellino, targeted the striker who was dropped for the weekend defeat by Roma after a row with the manager, Fabio Grosso, as he answered questions about the former Italy international. Cellino said, "What can I say? That he's black and he's working to whiten himself, but he has great difficulties in this." He was asked about Balotelli before Serie A meeting on Monday and may have been using a play on the word black, which in Italian is often used to mean angry. So we're back with the monthly, who's racist today in Serie A.
Racism bingo, Serie A style.
Right.
Yeah.
so, and I know we touched on this earlier in the show with Gab. So, it's not a whole lot more that really needs to be said about it, but it's, I guess to a certain extent, it's not the entire Curva North that's doing it this time. It's just one, asshole. But this guy's a chairman of a club, as previously stated, he's formerly of Leeds United. So he's been in the UK. This guy's been around. So this again. I don't even know why. Even if you are playing on the word or whatever, why in the world would you use that sentence to describe what you're trying to say? There has to be, this guy has to be, crazy to think that wouldn't have some kind of backlash. So
this is Massimo Cellino. He is absolutely crazy. This is a guy. I mean, he is out there. He's the last crazy Italian, the old school Italian club president, and he also added on during this press conference. He said, "Look, I'm an old elephant in calcio. I don't have I don't have a computer. I don't use the internet. And I barely even use a cell phone." And that's like his way of saying how old school he is. And I don't think that's something he should be proud of. But that's the kind of guy he is. But I for sure know that he's not racist. He's just crazy, and he thought that he was being funny. This was his way of exactly like there's a double entendre when you say that you're angry, and also he didn't say whiten himself. Like in that situation, again, it's a double entendre. It can mean two things. He's playing with words, and he thinks he's being witty, and instead he's just making himself look like a giant moron.
And that's the thing is I've always going to school in Germany with a bunch of Italian friends of mine. I always appreciated their bluntness and honesty. It was such a great, they never ever let me not know what they were thinking. But at the same time, if you watch, for instance, and it goes in the media, if you watch the documentary, there's the scenes about Diego Maradona that the journalist actually asks, I think Napoli chairman or whatever, did the mafia pay for him? Just straight up. You can't. That's such a great question. Did the mafia pay for Maradona? It's a great question. With Napoli's, with the city of Naples ties and all this stuff to whatever. But sometimes being blunt and saying what is on your mind, especially in 2019, this is a different time, different age that we live in, and some of these
for me.
These old sayings are dead.
No, it's about context. That's the thing.
Context. Yes.
What Gab said. He has a Nigerian friend, a very good friend of his is Nigerian. That's exactly what Gab said. There is I think is spot on. What you say between friends in a closed conversation is not what you say at a press conference. Like this is this is what you teach children, that some things are for home, some things are for school. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't say stuff like this. He was making just a really bad joke, trying to be witty, and exactly like he makes the league look bad. He makes everyone look stupid, and then Brescia put out again these statements these people put out on their homepages on Twitter. Saying that he's been misunderstood. He was just making a pun. erasure, and people took it out of context, and he was using the paradoxical meanings of the same words and used in different contexts, and going full on linguistic lecture on everyone. And it's like, or we can keep this on one side, or we can just say I made a boo-boo and I'm sorry. Just stop digging deeper. And
Correct.
that's what's so frustrating with these people. It's just they're their own worst enemy. And they just, it's this league is anything if not eventful.
I would have almost, Nima, let it pass if he said, I understand what I said could be misunderstood. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. But
exactly.
It's still defending himself and defending. And that's where, because you don't see the error. And if you don't see the error, you cannot fix it.
This is Massimo Cellino. He's never been wrong once in his life, if you ask him. So that's a completely different story.
Leeds United might disagree.
Yeah, I'm sure they're happy Wednesday when he left. Right. Right. I want to thank you guys. That's all we have time for this week. I want to thank Gabriele Marcotti for coming on. I want to thank you, Michael Gallo.
Thank you very much for having me, Nima. And I hope when we talk next that Inter is still alive in the Champions League.
Amen. And also Mr. William Beckman. And it's Beckman, not Beckham, as some people thought.
Yeah, if you're going to send feedback to Nima, please get my name right. Because I'll assume it's negative when I see the screenshot of Beckham, and then actually it turns out to be positive. So let's just avoid all of that and get it right, please. Thank you.
And Mr. Critty Smith.
No hate mail to William David Beckham, please. No. And thanks, Nima. It's been fun as always, sir. Thank you very much, and great talking to all of you.
As always, thank you for this. I would like to thank everyone for this show, for coming on. All you listeners, click subscribe and rate us on iTunes or iOS if you can. And until next week, I'm your host Nima Tavallaey, wishing you a good week, 6 points, and sempre e solo forza Inter.